My name is Lisa. It's been just about a year since I married my husband, Robert. We've been living happily together in a small, cheap apartment, dreaming of moving into a newly built, detached house. His parents' house is located within a 5-minute walk, but they seldom come to our place. He once said, "My mom doesn't want to be the type to meddle with her son's marriage. That's why she doesn't visit us, even though we live so close." Upon hearing this, I started liking my mother-in-law even more. The biggest concern for most women after getting married is the meddling mother-in-law, but it seems I don't have to worry about that. If I were to be meddled with, I am sure I would resist. I've always been told by my parents, "If somebody picks on you, give it back twice as hard. Then nobody will mess with you." But it seemed unlikely I'd have to fight with my mother-in-law, so I was able to live stress-free regarding my family relationships. After several years of working, our careers were going well, and we started to have many conversations about buying a house. During this time, my parents, who had heard about our discussions, made us an attractive proposal. "We've always thought if you two decided to build a house, we'd give you some of our land. Feel free to use it." They offered to give us part of their own land. My parents aren't rich though. Thanks to a windfall my grandfather got a while ago, they have had some very good land to pass on to us. When they discussed it with my grandfather, he said, "I've passed it on to you, so do as you please." When I told Robert about this, he said, "Let's take advantage of their generosity. I'll never be able to thank your parents enough. And thank your grandpa too. It's his land after all. Ha ha ha." Ha ha ha. So we began to discuss what kind of house we wanted to live in, visiting showrooms on the weekends, touring our boss's impressive mansion, and talking to agents about new residences being built. Planning is often more fun than actually executing, isn't it? But then one day, a call from my mother-in-law shattered our happy life suddenly. When Robert answered a call from his mother, it seemed she had somehow heard about our plans to build a new house. She said to Robert, "If you're going to build a house, how about making it a duplex so we can live together?" We were both stunned by her proposal. We hadn't imagined that my mother-in-law, who had seldom interfered in our lives, would want to live with us in a duplex. After a few seconds of silence, Robert made a non-committal response and continued to dodge this question. It's not surprising that he reacted this way. We hadn't considered the option of a duplex. We were planning to have a room for a future child, but if we were to make it a duplex, we'd have to replan everything from scratch. But I worried that if we outright rejected the idea, our relationship with my mother-in-law would suffer. I was as perplexed as Robert. We had made a promise to have dinner at her place once a month, so we had a family dinner there. My mother-in-law began to continue her conversation from where we cut off last time, even though there was Robert's brother, Mark, a single father. "Hey, have you given any thought to our conversation from the other day about the duplex? I think it's a really good idea though. What do you think? Of course we will contribute financially, and selling our place here should net a pretty penny. Besides, kids are going to come along eventually, right? Wouldn't it be helpful if we're right next door whenever there's trouble? Isn't it all upsides?" And with that, she started rapid-fire listing off the merits of a duplex. I tried to interject several times, but she didn't let me. Sure, she had a point. It would be nice to have help when a baby comes along, and the financial contribution is appealing. But I believed that my husband and I could handle any issues that were within her capacity to solve. Besides, it's better to rely on my own parents than to increase the chances of being bullied by her. Seeing my contemplative face, she continued, "Is it really that bad? Living with us, I mean. I thought you didn't hate us, but maybe I was wrong." She seemed to be playing the part of the saddened, so I pretended not to hear and hurriedly left her house. She continued to bombard my husband daily with the same spiel, and I was starting to feel quite stressed. "What do you want to do, Robert?" "Living together isn't bad, I guess. It would be reassuring to have our parents around, but I don't want to lose our alone time either." After much thought, we decided to decline my mother-in-law's offer. We wanted to give a priority to our own time. We decided to prioritize that. Surely if we explain properly, my mother-in-law will understand. So the day of our monthly family dinner arrived, and we were heading over to my mother-in-law's house to relay our decision. As we tried to express our thoughts to her, she interrupted. "Oh, about the duplex. We've been moving forward with the plan." "Huh? What?" Before we could react further, she added, "Oh, and Mark's moving in too. You know he's a single dad. It's tough, right? Let's help him out with the kid. Plus, getting some experience with kids will be reassuring when you have your own, don't you think? You should definitely do that. We were so shocked by her words that we completely forgot why we had come. Seeing our silence, my mother-in-law took it as approval and proceeded with the construction of the duplex, taking into account the views of my father-in-law and brother-in-law. Of course, we didn't just stand by. We tried to convey our decision to our in-laws several times, but they always dismissed us saying, "We're busy right now, let's talk later." And the plans for the duplex moved forward. The cost for the construction was being covered by our in-laws, so we didn't have a huge financial burden. But not only would we be living with our in-laws, but also my single father brother-in-law, and we would have to help take care of his child. Thinking about it, I was already feeling down. My husband was of no help, having thrown in the towel saying, "There's nothing we can do to stop it now. Let's just give up." I also felt it was futile to resist alone. We then finalized the blueprint and started deciding on interior elements like the tiles and flooring. Normally at this stage, we should have secured the funds. However, the money my in-laws had promised to pay for the multifamily house was nowhere to be seen. My husband Robert called his mother asking her to transfer the funds, but she responded, "Something came up and I need money immediately. Could you cover it for me? I promise to pay you back in a month, okay?" Even though they can't pay now, the project has already proceeded and it's impossible to cancel everything at this point. Robert and I could barely manage to cover it ourselves, but we didn't feel the need to go to such lengths. My in-laws' selfish behavior infuriated both of us. "Hey, you talk about covering the cost like it's a small change," Robert yelled at his mother. "Come on, she said she'd pay it back in a month. Has she ever lied to you?" Suddenly, my brother-in-law butted in. Stunned by his intervention, Robert agreed to wait for a month for the payment and started waiting for his mother's transfer. I decided to consult with my parents about this. The next day, I went to my parents' house and explained the situation, wondering if we could put the plans on hold. They said, "We were going to give you that land anyway, and if they're promising to pay later, we'll cover the cost." "Really? Are you sure?" "Of course, dear. Your happiness is all that matters to us. Don't give up on your dream house. For the sake of your future children, don't let this multifamily plan go through. Thank you." I was so grateful that I teared up. My mom smirked and said, "Plus, if they're around all the time, it'll be hard for me to visit, right? And I want to hog all the grandkids to myself." With my mother's help, the construction proceeded as planned, and finally, our dream home was completed. However, a month later, we still hadn't received any money from my mother-in-law. Meanwhile, they had started moving their belongings in before us. "Strange, isn't it a bit cramped for a duplex? Where's my room?" Since they didn't transfer the money for a duplex, we didn't build one. Naturally, there was no room for her. But she started moving her stuff into the room we'd planned for our future children. To make matters worse, she invited her friends over under the guise of a housewarming party and showed them around the house. "It's our dream duplex. It's a bit small, but we have a wonderful garden and can even plant a vegetable garden. Once the veggies are ready, I'll share some with you," she said, as if they had built the house with their own money. Her friends, unaware of the circumstances, complimented the house before leaving. After they moved in and things settled down, 2 months passed and we still hadn't received any payment from my in-laws. Robert confronted them, but they kept saying, "Soon, very soon." The situation didn't change even after 3 months or even half a year. On the contrary, my mother-in-law announced one day, "We decided not to sell our house. Instead, we'll have Mark and his kids live there," blatantly stating that she wouldn't pay us any money. But I wasn't surprised. My husband and I had often discussed that she likely had no intention of paying. "Oh, I just noticed that the house is a bit cramped when you two live there too. Can you guys move out? I have friends who occasionally want to stay over, and I want to be able to use the place freely. Doesn't that sound good?" she asked. In response, my husband raised his voice slightly and said, "That's not the deal. Why should we have to leave our own house?" "Well, both of you are working, right? You're hardly ever at home, and since you don't have any kids, it shouldn't be a problem. Besides, Lisa's family is rich, right? You can afford to build a new house." I was dumbfounded by my mother-in-law's outrageous words. My husband felt the same way. First off, you haven't paid any of the expenses like you said you would. If you're not selling the house, you had no intention of paying from the beginning, right? What can I do? I decided to let Mark, who's a single father, live there. What's wrong with giving a house to my own son and his adorable children? She started to get increasingly irritated, and it seemed unlikely that things would clear up. So we decided to discuss it in our bedroom that night. If things continue like this, my mother and her family will definitely try to kick us out and take over the house. Yeah, I suppose so. My husband was right. From the next day onwards, my mother-in-law's attacks continued daily, and she started making nasty comments and harassing me. If you don't want to be bullied as a daughter-in-law, you better move out quickly. This is what they call mother-in-law versus daughter-in-law problems. I thought I wouldn't have to deal with such issues, but experiencing them firsthand turned out to be more troublesome than I'd imagined. When we were living in that small room, we barely interacted with her. Maybe I was foolish to not anticipate that things would turn out this way. However, being a person who believes in giving back as good as she gets, I decided to put a plan into action a month later. My husband, parents, grandfather, and I put a plan together. We decided to leave the house to execute our plan. My husband told my mother-in-law, "We're moving out. You want to invite your friends over as you please, right? You'll be happier that way." The moment she heard that, her face lit up with joy. We decided to move to a newly built apartment that we'd had our eyes on and return to renting. Reminds me of our newlywed days.
Yeah, it does.
Recalling our life in that apartment when we were newly married, we lived peacefully. Then, a week later, the phone rang. I overheard my husband say,
"I see, that's great. By when?"
I was sure that our plan had worked. In fact, the day after we made the plan with my parents and grandfather, we put our house up for sale. We found a buyer who wanted us to vacate in 3 weeks. While my mother-in-law wasn't around, we let acquaintances, colleagues, and others who wanted to see the house inside. Today's phone call was about one family who decided to buy. Then we arranged for 2 large trucks and decided to have the movers quickly load our belongings and furnitures onto them. We carefully timed it for when my in-laws announced that they were going to a theme park in New York over the weekend with their grandsons. They are probably enjoying their time with a certain mouse mascot right about now. Since they said they would be staying overnight, we thought that was our chance and prepared in advance. Everything went smoothly as planned because the professional movers did the packing for us, and it was completed much faster than we anticipated. We waited in front of the house, and when my in-laws returned in the evening, they seemed tense that something was different. My mother-in-law, looking anxious, entered the house and screamed, "What is this? What happened? Where are all our things?" My father-in-law was also making a fuss. Robert and I calmly observed my in-laws from the outside, and when they came out, we revealed the truth. Robert said,
"Everything is loaded on these trucks. The destination is noted on a piece of paper stuck onto the trucks, so please go there. It might be a bit small, but it's enough for the 2 of you to live in. Well, it might get a bit cramped if you invite friends over. Also, this house has already been sold. It's someone else's property now. Take care."
My in-laws were flabbergasted. "What do you mean you put it up for sale? It was our house. You can't just—"
"Our house? The property was in Lisa's parents' name, and the house is in our name. We are the owners, so we have the right to sell it. And you dare say it's your house when you haven't paid $1. You should be ashamed." At the unexpected words from their son, my in-laws, who were causing a big fuss, fell silent. Before we left, Robert said, "We've taken care of things until now, but you'll have to unload things yourselves. You can afford that much, can't you?"
"We don't have that kind of money."
"I know you must have. You've been selling things you stole from Lisa and depositing the money in your bank account."
"How did you know that?" "Does it matter? Oh, and you don't have to pay us back. Consider it severance pay. Use it however you like."
"And with that, we'll be off. I doubt we'll meet again."
With that, Robert made a declaration of severance to his parents, took my hand, and we hurried home. We then called our parents and grandparents to inform them of the successful execution of our plan, and they were very happy. Moreover, my grandfather, knowing that we were about to continue living in an apartment, said, "Actually, I still have some land left. I'll give it to you two. I'll also cover half the costs, so build a new house." And that's exactly what we did. Half a year later, we completed our dream of building a brand new single-family home. We're a bit removed from the city center, but the air is fresh, The neighbors are kind, and we're very happy. As for the whereabouts of my in-laws, we don't know if they went to the address we provided. It seems they contacted my parents asking for financial aid. They also apparently asked their son, who is planning to remarry next year, if they could live with him, but he flatly refused because his new wife was also planning to move in. My parents decisively turned them down. They told them not to involve our family anymore. Robert apologized to my parents for his terrible ones, but my parents said, "From now on, we're your real parents. Feel free to rely on us as much as you want as a son." Thinking about potential future incidents, my parents recommended that we install a home security system. We can rest easy knowing they've been briefed to turn away his parents if they ever show up. Moreover, we have a guard dog that is a small, cute puppy in our yard. I highly doubt they'd have the guts to intrude. From now on, we won't have to deal with his parents at all. It's the beginning of a new life for the two of us. We'll surely have children in a few years and build a happy family. We won't let anyone disturb our happiness. That's a promise we've made to ourselves.